Okay, question 1 says, soap powder is sold in 2 sizes of box. The first one is a small box where you get 1.75 kilograms for £4.20, and the other one is a large box where you get 3.5 kilograms for £8.68. It says, which size of box gives a better value for money? Explain your answer. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide my page into 2 to make my workings clearer, so I can do all my workings out for the small box on the left hand side and all my workings out for the large box on the right hand side. I'm going to work out how much it is per kilogram, okay, and in order to do that I need to do my price, so £4.20, divided by my weight, which is 1.75. So I do that on the calculator, and I can use my fractional button. So I need to do 4.20 divided by 1.75, and I get the answer 2.4. That 2.4 means that it is £2.40 per kilogram in the small box. For the large box, I'm going to do the same workings, so I need to do the price, so £8.68, divided by the weight, which is 3.5. Again, I do that on my calculator, so I need to do 8.68 divided by 3.5, and I get the answer 2.48. That means in the large box it is £2.48 per kilogram. So I've compared the two, now I need to explain which one gives a better value for money. It's pretty obvious from my workings that the small one is cheaper because I get more for my money. Okay, in the large box it costs 8 pence more per kilogram. I need to then write that in a sentence at the end. So I'm going to write that the small box is better value for money. Okay, that means I've stated which box gives the better value for money, but I also need to explain my answer. I need to explain it by saying that the large box is 8 pence more expensive, or the small box is 8 pence cheaper. So I'm going to say the small box is better value for money as it is 8 pence cheaper per kilogram. Okay, according to the mark scheme, I would get a method mark, so 1 mark, for either doing the calculation 4.2 divided by 1.75 or the calculation 8.68 divided by 3.5. That would get me 1 mark. To get the second mark, I needed to have done both of these calculations. That gets me the 2 marks. The last mark, the communication mark, I need to be able to state that it is the smaller box that is better value for money, and I need to state by how much it is better value for money. That would give me the communication mark, and altogether 3 marks. Okay, question 2. Says that a taxi company uses this formula to calculate taxi fares, where F is the taxi fare in pence and D is the distance travelled in kilometres. Aziz uses this taxi company to travel a distance of 8 kilometres. Okay, so I already know that D is going to be 8. I need to work out the taxi fare. Now this formula, it says that the taxi fare, F, is equal to 7 times the distance travelled squared plus 320. In the question, it tells me the distance is 8 kilometres, so I know that D equals 8, and they're going to have to substitute D equals 8 into this formula. So if I substitute D equals 8 into that formula, I should have that F equals 7 times 8 squared plus 320. If I calculate that on my calculator, so 7 times 8 squared is 448. And then I'm going to add 320. So altogether, if I add that together, I should have 768. Now in the question, it tells me that this taxi fare is in pence. So I know that my answer is 768 pence, or I could write it as £7.68. Either way, doesn't matter. Now to show where to get the marks, the first mark needs to show that I've done 7 times 8 squared, or that they've seen 448 somewhere. That would give me the first mark. My second mark is that the marker can see that I've calculated 768 as my answer. And the third mark, third and final mark, is that I have changed it into a monetary answer. So effectively I've written it in money terms. Okay? So it needs to be written correctly either in pence or either in pounds and pence. It doesn't matter. Question number 3. It says that here is a scale drawing of Gilda's garden. Down the bottom, it says that my scale, for my scale, 1 centimetre is representing 1 metre. It says that Gilda is going to plant an elm tree in the garden. She must plant the elm tree at least 4 metres from the oak tree. So at least means that it needs to be 4 metres or further away. On the diagram, show by shading the region where Gilda can plant the elm tree. So this is where the oak tree is. If my elm tree, or Gilda's elm tree, needs to be at least 4 metres from that oak tree, I need to have a distance of 4 metres, so effectively a radius of 4 metres away from that oak tree. Okay, so I'm going to grab my compass. Now, I'm not going to draw it 4 metres, that would be massive. I'm going to scale it down. So for every metre, I need to scale it as a 1 centimetre. So if I need to be 4 metres away, that implies that on this scale drawing, I'm going to be using 4 centimetres. Okay, so with my ruler, I can open out my compass. So I need to check that my compass is opening out from 0 to 4 centimetres. Okay. And then I need to put the pointy bit of my compass on where the oak tree is. And then draw an arc. Okay. So I know that this distance should be 4 centimetres, which when scaled properly in the garden would be 4 metres. Okay, it says that she must plant the elm tree at least 4 metres from the oak tree, so at least means 4 metres or further away. So on the diagram I need to show that by shading this region here, so anything away from the arc but still enclosed in the garden. Okay, so it's at least 4 metres away and it still needs to be enclosed in the garden. Now for the mark scheme. The first mark would be for drawing an arc that has a radius of 4 centimetres. Okay, depending on which paper you've been given. If you've been given an A4 paper, then you should have 4 centimetres. If you've been given an A5 paper, then scale it down to about half and it should be 2 centimetres. Okay, so that's my first mark for drawing that arc. My second mark is for shading the region correctly, so it has to be further away, so it has to be away from the arc and still bounded by the rest of the garden. That would be my second mark. Question 4. I've got an inequality here that goes from -4 to 1. It says that n is an integer. An integer is a whole number. Question A says write down all the possible values of n, so all the whole numbers n could be. Now this inequality states that n is greater than -4, but it's also less than or equal to 1. If it is greater than -4, then -4 is not part of that inequality. So n cannot be -4, so my first value could be is -3. N is also stated as being less than or equal to 1, so it could be any of those numbers in between. And it could also be 1, as n is less than or equal to. Question B wants me to write down the inequalities represented on the number line. So I know that my inequality is going to involve a -2 and a 4. Okay, so -2 is going to be at one end, and it's also going to involve a 4. Because the line is in the middle of these 2 points, I know it's going to be a bounded inequality. So it's not going to be 2 separate inequalities, it's going to be one altogether. And I know I'm dealing with the variable x because it's on that number line. Now, a coloured in dot means that x could be anything greater than or equal to -2. A dot that isn't coloured in means that x could be anything less than, but not equal to 4. To see where to pick up the marks then, so for question A, I would get 2 marks for stating all 5 correct values. If I had only stated 4 correct values and no others, then I would still get 1 mark. For question B, I would get 1 mark for knowing that the inequality involves the number -2 and 4. Sorry, not -4, 4. And the second mark for getting my inequality signs correct. Okay? Question 5. It says, here is a circle. The radius of the circle is 4 centimetres. Now the radius is halfway across the distance of the centre of the circle. It then says work out the circumference of the circle. Now the circumference is the distance around the edge of the circle, so effectively the perimeter of a circle. I need to know my formula for the circumference. the formula for the circumference, there are two ways of writing it. You can either write it as pi times the diameter, or you can also write it as 2 times pi times the radius. Either way, it will give you the same answer. Now in this question, we've been given the radius, so I'm going to look at this formula. Okay, so I now need to substitute in my radius of 4 centimetres. So I should have 2 times pi times 4, which on my calculator, if I type it in, so 2 times pi times 4, comes out as 8 pi. Okay, and if I want to change it into a decimal, it would come out as 25.13274,123. Now it hasn't stated in the question whether it wants me to round to any particular degree of accuracy, so I would make sure if you are going to write the decimal, make sure you write all the digits on your calculator display. Alright, now as long as I've written all the digits there, I should still be able to pick up all the marks and I can round it down here. Now a safe bet is always 3 significant figures or rounding it to 2 decimal places, so I'm going to round it to 2 decimal places. For the marks then, I would get 1 mark for substituting in the radius of 4 centimetres correctly, and I would get my second mark for turning it into a decimal. Okay, in the mark scheme it states that you can have anywhere between 25.1 and 25.2 as your answer, and you would still get that answer mark. Question 6, it says question 6a, sorry. Says complete the table of values for y equals x squared, take away 4. So I've got all my values of x that they want me to use, but I now need to find the rest of the y values they want me to have. Okay, and I do that by using this formula. So whatever my x value is, I need to square it and then take away 4. So for the first one, my x value is minus 3. So I'm going to substitute that into my equation. So I'm going to have minus 3 squared and then take away 4. Minus 3 squared is a positive 9, which I then take away 4 from, and I end up with 5. So my y coordinate is going to be 5. The same for this one. My x coordinate is 0, so I substitute in 0. 0 squared take away 4. 0 squared is 0. 0 take away 4. It's going to leave me with minus 4, which is my y coordinate. Finally, I've got an x coordinate of 1. I need to substitute that into my formula. So I've got 1 squared take away 4. 1 squared is 1, take away 4. 1 take away 4 leaves me with minus 3. So my y coordinate is minus 3. For question B, it says on the grid, draw the graph of y equals x squared take away 4 for x equals minus 3 to x equals 3. Okay, and luckily we've got all the coordinates in this table up here. So these are all my x coordinates, these are all my y coordinates. Now the first one I'm going to plot is minus 3, 5. So on my axis, I'm going to go across minus 3 and then go up 5. The next one is minus 2, 0. So I'm going to go across to minus 2 and go up 0. So I'm still on the x-axis. The next one is minus 1, minus 3. That means I go across to minus 1 and down to minus 3 and make a mark. My next one that I calculated was 0, minus 4. So I'm still at the origin and I go down to minus 4. So I'm still on the y-axis. And then my other one, 1, minus 3. So I go across to 1, down to minus 3. Then I've got coordinates of 2, 0. So I go across to 2 and go up 0, so I'm still on the x-axis. And then my final one is 3, 5. So I go across to 3 and then go up 5. I'll mark my point. Now I've plotted all my points. The final thing I need to do, and that I need to do with every graph, is I need to join my plots or my points together. Okay? This is going to be slightly inaccurate because it's going to be a curve. So I'm going to try and sketch it. So you just need to make sure that all your points join up into a curve. Like so. According to the mark scheme then, I would get 1 mark for getting the answer of 5 or minus 4 or minus 3. So I would get 1 mark for just calculating at least one of these values. The way to get the other mark is that I need to have calculated all 3 accurately. For part B, I need to have plotted at least 5 of my points correctly, and that means if you've calculated these points incorrectly, as long as you have plotted your points, you would still get a follow-through mark. So I need to make sure that I've plotted all my points correctly, and for the second mark, I need to have made sure I've plotted a fully correct curve. So I need to have joined my plots together. Okay, and yet again, if I plotted my values, that would still be correct. So you could still get both marks in this question, even if you've not calculated them correctly in question A. Question 7. I need to describe fully the single transformation that maps triangle A onto triangle B. Now the first thing to do with any transformation questions is to look how many marks it's worth, because depending on how many marks it's worth is essentially how many points you need to make. So for example, this one is worth 3 marks. That immediately tells me that I need to make at least 3 points about this transformation. Now the first one, or the first point, is to say what the transformation is. Now it's pretty obvious that this is an enlargement, because triangle A, I can't spell enlargement, triangle B is a lot bigger than triangle A. Okay, now when dealing with enlargement, we need to state that it's an enlargement, we need to state the scale factor, and we also need to say the centre of enlargement. Now the scale factor, we need to actually look at the shape, pick one of the sides. I'm going to pick the base. The base has a width of 2 units. My enlarged triangle has a width of 4 units. To find out what my scale factor is, I need to use the width of the new triangle and divide it by the width of the original triangle. So if I do 4 divided by 2, I get 2, and that tells me that my scale factor is 2. The last one, to work out the centre of enlargement, you need to grab a ruler and join, so where these 2 corners are on these 2 triangles, okay, join a line between those 2 points and then extend the line further. Okay, do it again for these 2 points. So join those 2 with a line and then extend further. And do it again for the top corners of each triangle. So join those 2 together and then extend further. Now where all those lines meet, or where all those points cross, that is my centre of enlargement. So I need to know the coordinates of that point there. Okay, that point there has coordinates 6, minus 5, because on the x-axis I need to go across 6 and down to minus 5 on the y-axis. So my centre is going to have the coordinates 6, minus 5. And that is my 3 points, hopefully to get the 3 marks. So to show where I get all the marks from, the first mark I need to have stated that it is an enlargement. For the second mark, I needed to have stated that it has increased by the scale factor of 2. And for my third mark, I need to say that it has got a centre of enlargement at 6, minus 5. Question 8 says that Zara is the manager of a shop. The table gives information about the expenses the shop had last year. Okay, so it gives information on wages, rent, goods, and other expenses. It says that this year the wages will increase by 7.5%, so they'll go up by 7.5%. The rent will be 7/9 of the rent last year, and the other expenses will halve. Zara wants to increase the amount of money she spends on goods. She also wants the total expenses the shop has this year to be the same as last year. Can Zara increase the amount of money she spends on goods? So first thing we need to work out, we've got all the information for last year, but we need to work out how much everything's going to cost for this year. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to deal with is the wages, because it's the first thing in my list. So if I'm dealing with wages, it says they will increase by 7.5%. Alright, if originally they were at 92,000, I need to increase that 92,000 by 7.5%. Now to do that, I'm going to change this 7.5 into a percentage multiplier, which essentially means a decimal. Now 7.5% as a decimal is 0.075. Okay, so I'm going to calculate this of the original amount of wages. So 92,000 multiplied, because it's a percentage multiplier, by 0.075. And on my calculator, I get the answer. Oops, typed in wrong. 6,900. Okay, so altogether, the new amount, if it increased by 7.5%, the new amount for wages is going to be 98,900. So I've worked out how much it is for wages. The next one I'm going to calculate is for rent. And it says that the rent will be 7/9 of the rent last year. So I need to find 7/9 of this amount, 10,800. Okay, to calculate fractions of amounts, I multiply. So on my calculator, I'm going to use my fraction button. So 7/9 and then multiply of means to multiply of 10,800. And that is 8,400. So my answer, or what the rent will be this year, is 8,400. Okay, so I've dealt with the rent. My final one is I need to deal with the other expenses and calculate what that will be. It says that the other expenses will halve this year. So I need to do my original amount of other expenses, which is 7,000, and then I need to halve it. So I'm going to do 7,000 divided by 2. Okay, which I can do on my calculator if I'm unsure, which is 3,500. So I've been able to calculate what all the new prices will be. Now I need to see if that's going to make a difference and to see whether Zara can increase the amount of money she spends on goods. So in order to do that, I'm going to add all those new amounts together. So I've got 98,900. So sorry, this is for this year. I've got 98,900 on wages. I've got 8,400 on rent. And I've got 3,500 on other expenses. And altogether, if I add that one off my calculator, oops, comes to 110,800. For last year, I'm going to calculate how much it cost for them to have those, how much it cost in total for the wages, rent and other expenses last year. So last year on wages, she spent 92,000. On rent, she spent 10,800. And on other expenses, she spent 7,000. So I'm going to add all of that together. So I've got 92,000 plus 10,800 plus 7,000. And altogether, oh, you're kidding. So altogether, it cost £109,800. So we can clearly see that actually last year she spent less than she's going to spend this year, and therefore she won't be able to increase the amount of money she spends on goods. So I now need to say that in a sentence. Alright, so I need to state that no, Zara cannot increase the amount she spends on goods as this year she has already spent 1,000 more. That's it. So in order to get the marks, I would get 1 mark for an attempt to calculate 7.5% of 92,000. I would get another mark for attempting to find a fractional amount of 10,800. And I would get my third and final method mark for calculating how much the other expenses would be, and then adding all 3 together. My last mark is a communication mark, and I need to have shown that I've compared these 2 prices Okay, so I need to have a statement that says no, she can't spend any more, and I need to give a reason why. Okay, so my reason why is that she's already spent £1,000 more, and that will get me my 4th mark. Question 9, part A, asks me to work out the value of the square root of 30 divided by 2.5 squared. And then it says, give your answer correct to 3 decimal places. Okay, obviously this is a calculator paper. Alright, so this should be fairly easy. Alright, the first thing I'm going to calculate is I'm going to calculate 2.5 squared. So 2.5 squared is equal, use my calculator, to 6.25. So I then know I've got to do the square root of 30 divided by 6.25. So I type that into my calculator. I'm going to use the fraction button. On the numerator, I've got the square root of 30, and on the denominator, I've got 6.25. Altogether, that is 0.8763569092. Whenever I'm doing a calculator paper, I would always write whatever's on the calculator display before I round, just to be on the safe side. It then wants me to round to 3 decimal places. Okay, so I'm looking at the 3rd decimal place, so 1, 2, 3, this is my 3rd decimal place. So I look to the digit on the right, that 3 is going to tell me to round down, so to 3 decimal places, my answer should be 0.876. Part B, I need to change 4.5 kilometres squared to metres squared. Now the first thing I'm going to write down is what I know about kilometres and metres, and that is that there are 1,000 metres in 1 kilometre. Okay, if I'm changing 4.5 kilometres squared to metres squared, then what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to need to do 4.5 multiplied by 1,000, but I'm going to have to do it by 1,000 squared, as I'm not going from kilometres to metres, I'm going from kilometres squared to metres squared. So I need to do 4.5 times 1,000 squared. 1,000 squared is 1 million. And therefore 4.5 times 1 million would give me 4,500,000. And that would be my answer. So for the marks on question 9a, the first mark, they need to have seen that I've either calculated the numerator or the denominator. I chose to do the denominator, and then I would do the original numerator divided by that denominator. That is 1 mark. You may have chosen to work out the square root of 30 and then divided it by 2.5 squared. It's up to you. My final mark is my answer mark, and I would get an answer mark for any answer in the range 0.876 to 0.877. For part B, I would get 1 method mark for multiplying 4.5 times 1,000 squared, or you may have seen it as, you may have done it as 4.5 times 1,000 times 1,000. And I would get my second and final mark for the answer of 4,500,000. Question 10 says that the equation x cubed take away 2x equals 30 has a solution between 3 and 4. It then asks me to use a trial and improvement method to find this solution. Give your answer correct to 1 decimal place. You must show all your work in. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is draw up my table. Okay, now in my table, in the first column, I'm going to have all my values of x I'm going to try. In my second column, I'm going to have what the answer would be for my particular choice of x. And then my third column is just going to be a statement as to whether my answer is too big or too small. So I'm trying to find an answer as close to 30 as I can. So in this box, I'm going to write whether it's too big or too small. Now it says the equation has a solution between 3 and 4, so that tells me those are the first 2 values I need to try in this equation. So I'm going to try x equals 3. So on my calculator, I need to do 3 cubed, take away 2 times 3. That gives me an answer of 21. Now 21 is too small because I want an answer close to 30. So I'm going to write too small. My next one I'm going to try is 4. So I write 4 cubed, take away 2 times 4. And I get an answer of 56, which is, again, not near 30, it's too big. which just confirms that actually my solution is going to be somewhere between 3 and 4. So I'm going to try slap bang in the middle and try 3.5. So I'm going to try 3.5 cubed, take away 2 times 3.5. That gives me an answer of 35.875. Again, that is too big. However, it now tells me that my answer is either between 3 and 3.5. So I'm going to try in between those two values, and I'm going to try 3.2. So if I type that in, 3.2 cubed, take away 2 times 3.2, I get the answer 26.368, which is too small. However, what this has done is it's narrowed it down. I now know my solution is between 3.2 and 3.5. So I'm going to try in between there, and I'm going to try 3.4. I get an answer of 32.504, which is too big. But I now know my answer is between 3.4 and 3.2. So I'm going to try 3.3. Which gives me 29.337, which is still too small. However, I now know that my solution is between 3.3 and 3.4. I still don't know, though, what it would be rounded to 1 decimal place, so I need to try exactly in between 3.3 and 3.4 to know whether it would round down to 3.3 or round up to 3.4. So I'm going to try 3.35. Which gives me 30.895375, which is too big for my solution of 30. However, it tells me that my solution is either between 3.3 and 3.35. Now, if my answer is correct to 1 decimal place, then that means if it's any value between 3.3 and 3.35, it's going to round down to 3.3. So my answer to 1 decimal place is going to be 3.3. Okay, for the marks, then, I would get 1 mark for doing a trial between 3 and 4. I would get another mark for doing a trial between 3.3 and 3.4. And my other mark is for seeing if I've done a different trial outside of 3.3 and 3.4, which I've done 3.5. Okay? My 4th and final mark is for my answer of 3.3. Question 11. Sam has a swimming pool. There are 60,000 litres of water in the swimming pool. Sam wants to put chlorine powder in the water. She needs 0.75 milligrams of chlorine powder for each litre of water. Work out the total amount of chlorine powder Sam needs. Give your answer in grams. So there are 60,000 litres of water in the swimming pool, and she needs 0.75 milligrams of powder for each litre. That tells me my first calculation. So she's got 60,000. I need to multiply that by 0.75. So 60,000. That gives me 45,000. So she needs 45,000 milligrams of chlorine powder for 60,000 litres of water. Now I need to make sure I've read the question carefully, because it wants me to give my answer in grams. And at the moment, my answer is in milligrams. So I need to know how many milligrams are in 1 gram. There are 1,000 milligrams in 1 gram. So if I want to go from milligrams to grams, I'm going to have to divide by 1,000. So I need to divide my 45,000 milligrams by 1,000, which gives me 45. And now my answer is in grams. For my first mark, then, it would be for multiplying 60,000 by 0.75, so finding how much chlorine powder she needs for the amount of water she has. For my second method mark, would be for changing my answer in milligrams into grams. And then my final mark is for my answer. Now this is a correct answer only mark, which means if I'd only put 45 in the answer, I would only get 1 mark. I need to have shown my method. Question 12, part A, asks me to solve 2x plus 3 equals x take away 4. The first thing I'm going to do is, well, the first thing I've noticed, I'm quite uncomfortable with the fact that there are x's on both sides. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to try and eliminate those x's. So I'm going to take away an x from both sides, and that will hopefully get rid of this one here. If I take an x from both sides, I'm just left with 1x here, because I started off with 2, and I've taken 1 away. I've still got my plus 3. And on the right hand side, I've got rid of that x, so I'm just left with minus 4. Alright, I now need to solve it to find out what x is. And in order to do that, I need to get rid of this plus 3, so I'm going to take away a 3 from both sides. If I take away a 3 from this side, I'm just left with x. If I take away 3 from minus 4, I'm left with minus 7. So my answer is minus 7. Part B, I'm asked to solve 4 brackets x minus 5 equals 14. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of those brackets. I'm uncomfortable with those brackets. So I'm going to expand them out, and expanding means to multiply out the brackets. So I'm going to do 4 times x, which is 4x, and then I'm going to do 4 times a negative 5, which gives me negative 20. I'm still left with 14 on the right hand side. And then it's in a form that I find a bit more comfortable to solve. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that minus 20, so I'm going to add 20 to both sides. If I add 20 to the left hand side, I'm just left with my 4x, because that minus 20 will disappear. And if I add 20 to the other side, I've got 34. At the moment, I've got 4 x's, whereas I just want 1 x in the answer. So I've got 4 of them, I'm going to divide by 4 on both sides. That means that that 4 can cancel with that 4, and I'm just left with x on the left-hand side. And then I need to calculate 34 divided by 4, which is calculator paper, so it should be fairly easy to do, which is 8.5. That means my solution is x equals 8.5. So my first mark on 12 part A then is going to be for attempting to get the x's on one side. Okay. My last mark for it is for getting the answer of minus 7. And this is also a correct answer only question. So if I only put minus 7, I would only get 1 out of the 2 marks. I need to have shown my workings. For part B, I need to have made an attempt to multiply or expand the brackets, which I've done. However, you may have decided to divide both sides by 4 and not expanded the brackets at all. Either way, that would get you the first method mark. And the second mark is for getting the answer of 8.5. Question 13. It says that here are 2 schemes for investing £2,500 for 2 years. Scheme A gives 4% simple interest each year. Scheme B gives 3.9% compound interest each year. It asks me which scheme gives the most total interest over 2 years, and you must show all your working. So again, if we're dealing with 2 different things that we're trying to compare, I'm going to divide my page into 2. So I can do all my calculation for scheme A on the left and all my calculation for scheme B on the right, and then I can easily compare the 2. I'm going to start with scheme A first. Now scheme A gives 4% simple interest each year, so I'm going to be finding a percentage of an amount. That means I need to know my percentage multipliers. Now 4% as a percentage multiplier as a decimal is 0.04. So for scheme A, I'm going to take my original amount of 2,500 and I'm going to multiply it by 0.04. Now this is investing money for 2 years, so whatever, this will give me interest for 1 year. However, I want to know what it will be after 2 years, so I'm going to multiply by 2. Now if I type that into the calculator, I get 200. That means that scheme A will give me £200 interest after 2 years. Scheme B is slightly different. I'm using compound interest. So it gives me 3.9% compound interest each year. Now again, I need to know my percentage multipliers. 3.9% as a decimal is equal to 0.039. Now to calculate the interest after the 2 years, I'm going to take my original amount and I'm going to multiply it by 1.039 because I want 103.9% interest. Now I want it over 2 years. At the moment I'm only getting it over 1. I want it over 2 years, so I need to take this to the power of 2 as it is compound interest. On my calculator, oops, that gives me 2,698.8025. So that tells me that over the 2 years I will then have an amount of £2,698.80. But I want to know what the interest will be, so I need to take the original amount away from my new amount. So I'm going to take 2,500 away from my new amount. And that leaves me with 198.8025. So that implies that over the 2 years, I will gain £198.80 in interest. And now I need to compare the two. The question asks me which scheme gives the most total interest over 2 years. Scheme A gives the most total interest as I get more money. So I need to make sure that I write that down in a sentence. So I need to say that scheme A gives the most total interest. Okay, it's only asking me which scheme, which I've stated down here. For my first mark, it'll be for using a correct method of finding 4% of 2,500 and coming out with the answer of 200. My second mark is for correctly calculating the amount of interest with 3.9% compound interest each year and then taking it away from my original amount. That'll give me my third mark. My final mark will be for comparing the two. Okay, so I get a communication mark for writing that sentence that scheme A gives the most total interest. So I got 1 mark for calculating 4% interest, another mark for calculating 3.9% interest and subtracting it from the original amount, or subtracting the original amount from my new amount, and then 1 mark for my communication. For question 14, I need to solve the simultaneous equations 3x take away 2y equals 7 and 7x plus 2y equals 13. The first thing I'm going to do is I need to eliminate either one of my y's or my x's. I'm going to choose to eliminate the y's because they've got the same coefficient, so it should be easy to get rid of. Now I've got a minus 2y and a positive 2y. To try and eliminate those y's, I'm going to add both equations together. So if I add everything on the right hand side, I've got 7 plus 13 gives me 20. Minus 2y plus 2y leaves me with no y's. And 3x plus 7x leaves me with 10x. So I'm now left with the new equation, 10x equals 20. I'm now going to solve that to find x. So I'm going to divide both sides by 10. That will cancel with that one. So I'm left with x equals 20 divided by 10, which is 2. So x equals 2. I then need to substitute my new x value into one of these equations, one of the original equations. I'm going to choose to substitute it into this one, purely because it doesn't involve any negatives, and sometimes negatives can get a bit sticky. Alright, in this new equation, I've got 7 times x plus 2 lots of y equals 13. I now know what x is, so I'm going to do 7 times x, or 7 times 2, plus 2 lots of y, which I don't know yet, and equals 13. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 2y equals 13. Now I'm going to subtract 14 from both sides because I want to get the y on its own. So I'm going to get rid of this 14. That means I'm left with 2y on the left hand side. 13 take away 14 leaves me with minus 1. At the moment I've got 2 y's, but I want to know what 1y is. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. That 2 will cancel with that one, and I'm left with y equals minus a half, or minus 0.5. They're both the same. So I then need to make sure I write this in my answer. That x equals 2 and y equals minus 0.5 or minus a half. For my first mark, it is for the correct process to eliminate either x or y. I chose to eliminate the y's. If you chose to eliminate the x's, you should also get the mark. My second method mark is for correctly substituting in my variable, so the value I found of x. And my third and final mark is for getting the answer that x equals 2 and y equals -1/2. Question 15, part A, asks me to write the number 0.0037 in standard form. Now, standard form means that I need to have some number between 1 and 10 multiplied by a power of 10, okay? So I don't know what that power is yet. I need to work out what number that's going to be. So if I'm dealing with the number 0.0337, I need to be able to write this as a number between 1 and 10 multiplied by a power of 10. The only way I can write this between 1 and 10 is if I have 3.7. Now I've effectively moved my decimal point 1, 2, 3 spaces, so I would multiply it by a power of 10 to the power -3. So my answer is 3.7 times 10 to the power of -3. Part B, I need to write the number 4.9 times 10 to the power of 4 as an ordinary number. So I'm writing the number 4.9 times 10 to the power of 4. So I'm going to have a number with no multiples of 10 in it. This little power of 4 tells me that effectively my decimal point is going to move 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. And I would then need to fill those spaces with zeros, which would then leave me with the number 49,000. So 15 part C asks me to work out the value of 500 divided by 250 times 10 to the power of 3. There are actually two ways I can do this, alright? I'm going to show you both ways, and also says to give your answer in standard form. So the first way you can do it is that you can turn them all into ordinary numbers and do the division that way. So my numerator is already written as an ordinary number. My denominator is 250 times 10 to the power of 3. 10 to the power of 3 is 1,000, so I'm going to rewrite it as 1,000. And then I'm going to actually calculate my denominator. And then I can type that into the calculator. And it gives me 1 over 500, which I know is 0.002. In the question it states I need to give my answer in standard form, so I need to change this number into standard form. And in standard form, that's going to be 2 times 10 to the power of -3, because effectively my decimal point would move 1, 2, 3 spaces. The second way you can do it is actually to convert them all into standard form and simplify it using rules of indices. So the number 500 can actually be written as 5 times 10 to the power of 2, and then 250 times 10 to the power of 3 can actually be written as 2.5 times 10 to the power of 2 times 10 to the power of 3. If I simplify that, I've got 5 times 10 to the power of 2 on the top, divided by 2.5 times 10 to the power of 5 on my denominator, because index rules or index laws tells me that I can add those indices. I can then split my fraction up because it's being multiplied, so I can actually split into two fractions. I can have 5 divided by 2.5 multiplied by 10 squared over 10 to the power of 5. 5 divided by 2.5 is 2. 10 squared divided by 10 to the power of 5 is 10 to the power of -3, because index laws tells me that I would do 10 to the power of 2 take away 5. And that's my answer. The marks in question 15 then, I would get 1 mark for getting the correct answer in standard form, and this is a correct answer only mark. Again, pretty similar for part B, I would get 1 mark for having the number 49,000, and again, it's a correct answer only mark. For part C, if I did it the first way I've done it, okay, I would get 1 mark for attempting to divide using two numbers that are in consistent form. Okay, so I've changed both of them into ordinary numbers and I've tried to divide them. That gives me the first mark. My second mark is for getting the correct answer. Again, for my second method, as long as I'm attempting to divide numbers that are in consistent form, so these are both in standard form, and then I've attempted to divide them, that gets me 1 mark, and then my second mark would be for my answer. Question 16, it says, here is a vase in the shape of a cylinder. The vase has a radius of 5 centimetres, and there are 1,000 centimetres cubed of water in the vase, so all of that grey shaded bit is water. It asked me to work out the depth of the water in the vase and give my answer correct to 1 decimal place. So effectively the depth of the water I'm actually going to be trying to find the height of that cylinder there. That's what I'm doing, okay? Now, to work out the volume of a cylinder, I would need to do pi multiplied by the radius squared and then multiply it by the height. Now we're trying to find out the height, so I need to figure out what information I already have to see if I can find out that height. In the question it tells me that the volume is 1000 centimetres cubed, so I know that V is 1000. And it also tells me that the radius is 5 centimetres, so I know that R is going to be 5. And I know I need to work out the height. I now need to simplify this equation to find out what h is. So the first thing I'm going to do is divide both sides by pi times 5 squared. Okay, that will mean that cancels with that, and I should just be left with h on the right hand side. And then I can work out what this is on the calculator. And it comes out as 12.73239.545. Just about squeezed it in. Okay, it asked me to give my answer correct to 1 decimal place. Alright, so I need to round this to 1 decimal place. My first decimal place is this one here. So I look to the right to see if I need to round up or down. That's a 3, so I'm going to round down, so my answer should be 12.7. Now for the marks in question 16, I would get 1 mark for correctly substituting in my radius. Okay, so substituting in as 5, that would give me my first method mark. My second method mark would be for doing the volume, so 1000 divided by pi times 5 squared. And then my third and final mark would be for getting my answer of 12.7. Now in the question it said that I need to round it to 1 decimal place. However, a marker, or in the mark scheme it says you can have any number between 12.7 and 12.8 and you would still get that answer mark. Question 17 asks me to make x the subject of this equation here. So I've got 4x take away 3 equals 2 brackets x plus y. The first thing that I'm going to do is multiply out the brackets, because I don't like brackets being there. So I've still got 4x minus 3 on the left hand side. But I need to do 2 times x, which gives me 2x, and then 2 times a positive y, so I get plus 2y. Okay, I'm trying to make x the subject of the formula, so I'm going to try and make sure that I've got all my x's on one side. So I'm now going to take 2x away from both sides, which leaves me with 2x on the left hand side. Still got my negative 3. However, I've managed to get rid of this 2x here, so I'm just left with 2y on the right hand side. Again, I'm still trying to get x on its own, so when I'm trying to make something the subject of a formula, I want to get that variable on its own and make everything else equal to it. So I'm now going to add 3. So I'm left with 2x on the left hand side, and then I've got 2y plus this new 3 on the right hand side. Now, I've got x on the left hand side on its own, however I just want to make x the subject, and at the moment I've got 2 of them. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So that 2 will cancel with that one, I'm just left with x on its own. And I've then got 2y plus 3 divided by 2. Now I could leave it in that form. I could also split the fraction up, so I could have 2y divided by 2 plus 3 over 2. And that would mean I could cancel these 2's here, and I would be left with y plus 3 over 2. Or you could write that as 1.5. Okay, and then I need to make sure I write it down in my answer. So x equals y plus 3 over 2, or y plus 1.5. My first mark then is for an attempt to expand the brackets. Okay, so that's where I'm going to get my first method mark. My second method mark is for attempting to get x on one side of the equation, which I did here. And my final mark is for getting my answer. Now, according to this mark scheme, to get that answer mark, you could write it as y plus 3 over 2. You could also have written it as y plus 1.5, and you could have also left it in the form that we had at the beginning, which was 2y plus 3 over 2. Any of those answers would have got you that A1 mark. Question 18. I've got a y and an x axis here with a line going through it with the equation y equals 2x minus 1. It says in the diagram, the points A, B and C lie on the straight line y equals 2x minus 1. The coordinates of A are 2, 3. The coordinates of B are 5, 9. It then says given that AC, so that distance there, is 3 times the distance between A and B. And then we need to find the coordinates of C. Alright, so first I'm going to deal with the things that I know. So I know that this length from A to C is triple the distance between A and B. So I'm going to try and find the distance between A and B first. So I'm dealing with AB. The first thing I'm going to do is find the difference in the x coordinates. Okay, so at A my x coordinate is 2 and at B my x coordinate is 5. I'm going to do 5, take away 2, and I get 3. I'm then going to find the difference in the y coordinates. Now at A my y coordinate is 3 and at B my y coordinate is 9. So I'm going to do 9 take away 3 and it equals 6. This effectively tells me that if I drew a little triangle here, a right angle triangle, this distance would be 3 and this distance would be 6. So I'd have a base of 3, a height of 6. Alright, I now need to try and work out the difference in the x and y coordinates from going from A to C. Okay, so I'm now dealing with AC, and I know that anything to do with AC is 3 times whatever it is for AB. Okay, so the difference in the x coordinates is going to be 3 times whatever the difference in the x coordinates was for AB. I know the difference in the x coordinates was 3, so I'm going to do 3 times my 3, which gives me 9. The difference in the y coordinates again is going to be 3 times whatever the difference in the y coordinates was for AB. So I'm going to do 3 times 6, which gives me 18. This tells me that the difference between the A coordinate and the C coordinate for the x coordinates is going to be 9, and the difference between the y coordinates is going to be 18. That means that I can just add 9 to my x coordinate of A, and I can add 18 to my y coordinate of A. Alright, so my original A coordinate was 2, 3. My C coordinate is going to be 2 plus whatever the difference was in the x coordinates, which was 9. And my y coordinate is going to be 3 plus whatever the difference was in the y coordinates here, so 18. That means that C should have coordinates 11 and 21. My first mark is going to be for finding the difference between either the x coordinates or the y coordinates. Okay, so doing either one of those. My second method mark is for them finding the difference between the coordinates between A and C and then adding it on. Okay, so I would need to find the difference between A and C, or the coordinates in A and C, and then I need to add that difference on. And then my third and final mark is my answer mark, and this is a correct answer only mark. Therefore, if I'd only put 11 and 21, I would only get 1 mark. I need to show the rest of my method and show my workings. Question 19. I'm given a diagram which looks like it's got a few triangles in. It says in the diagram A, B, C, A, C, D and A, P, D are all right angle triangles. AB is 4 centimetres, BC is 3 centimetres and CD is 2 centimetres. I'm then asked to work out the length of DP, so this one here. Okay, so that's the length I need to work out. Now, the first thing I'm going to work out is I'm going to start looking at this triangle here. Okay, so the triangle ABC, and I'm going to try and work out this length AC. Alright, so I'm going to start working out AC. Now I can use Pythagoras' theorem because I've got the length here and I've got this length here, And Pythagoras' theorem states that this length squared plus this length squared will equal that length squared. So to work out the length of AC, I'm going to do the square root of 4 squared plus 3 squared, which if I type in my calculator, equals 5. Nice and easy. So AC is 5 centimetres. I'm now going to look at this triangle here, so the one next to it. So the triangle ACD, and I'm going to work out the length AD. Now again, this is a hypotenuse. I've just worked out this length. I've been given this one, so I can then work out AD using Pythagoras' theorem. So I've got 5 squared plus 2 squared, and then I square root to find the answer. So on the calculator, got square root of 5 squared plus 2 squared, which gives me 5.385164807. Now I'm going to write out the whole thing because I've not finished calculating anything yet, and I don't want to start rounding because that may make my answer later inaccurate. Now, I've managed to find some lengths, but actually what I need to start doing is focusing on this triangle. Okay, now I've now got the hypotenuse of this triangle, alright? However, I still need to work out this length. Now there's not a way of me working out this length here, so what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to try and work out this whole angle. Alright, now first of all, I'm going to try and work out this angle here, so the angle BAC. Okay, now to work out the size of angle BAC, I can use the fact that I've been given an adjacent length of 4 and an opposite length of 3. Now I'm going to use trigonometry. If I'm using the opposite and the adjacent, that means I'm going to use tan, so I'm looking at TOA. Alright, now trigonometry means that I can do tan of the angle, so I'm looking at BAC, is equal to the opposite divided by the adjacent. So in this case, 3 divided by 4. Now I'm trying to find the angle, and at the moment the angle is trapped in this tan, so I need to do the inverse of tan on both sides to find out what this angle is. So I'm going to do the inverse of tan, so tan minus 1 of 3 over 4. And I get the answer 36.869899765. Okay, so I find this angle here. The next one I'm going to do is I'm going to find out this angle. So the angle CAD. Now again, I worked out this length here, which would be the adjacent according to that angle, and I've also been given this length here, which would be the opposite. So again, I'm using the opposite and the adjacent, so I'm going to use tan. Alright, so I'm still looking at TOA. Now I'm going to do, or trigonometry rather, states that tan of the angle, so tan of CAD, is equal to the opposite divided by the adjacent. My opposite length was 2, and my adjacent length was 5. So I'm going to have tan of the angle equals 2 over 5. Alright, now I want the angle, which at the moment is trapped in tan, so I'm going to have to do the same as I did here. I'm going to have to do the inverse of tan on both sides. If I type that in my calculator, I get 21.801404949. Now again, I'm keeping these in their long form. I'm not going to round yet because I've not got to the end of the answer yet. Okay, so I've managed to find this angle and this angle, which effectively means that if I add them together, I've got all of this angle here. So the angle BAD. Alright, I can then use that angle to work out this length here, because I'll have the hypotenuse, I'll have an angle, and I'll be looking to find the opposite length. Now if I'm trying to find the opposite length and I've got the hypotenuse, according to trigonometry, I'm going to use the ratio of involving sine. So that's SO. Okay, now this tells me that sine of the angle is equal to the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. Now I want to work out the opposite. So if I cover that up, that tells me that I've got to do sine of the angle multiplied by the hypotenuse, and that will give me the opposite length. So effectively, I'm going to do sine of this angle plus this angle multiplied by my hypotenuse length, which was this one here. Okay, and that should then give me my opposite length. So I'm doing sine of this one here, so 36.86989,765, plus this one here, and then I'm multiplying it by this length that we worked out originally. And I get the answer 4.6. Okay, therefore dp, so that length there, equals 4.6 centimetres. So my first mark I would get for either working out the length of AC or AD. So that'll give me 1 mark whether I do that one or that one. My next mark is for working out the angle BAC, so this one here, the green one. So that's my next method mark. My next method mark is for working out this angle here, so the orange one, which I've done here. And then my fourth mark will come from trying to calculate the length of dp, so the fact that I've substituted all the values that I've calculated into this formula. And then my final mark will come for getting the answer. Now the mark scheme states that I can have any answer between 4.59 and 4.61. And I still get that answer mark. Question number 20. I'm asked to solve the equation 2x squared plus 5x take away 3 equals 0. This is a quadratic equation, therefore when I'm trying to solve it I'm going to start trying to put it, or trying to factorise it back into brackets. Okay, because it's a quadratic, I know I'm going to have a double bracket. Now the only way that I can get a 2x squared at the start of this equation is if I start with a 2x in one bracket and an x in the other. Now I need to figure out what the rest of my bracket needs to have inside. So I'm going to start looking at this bit here. So I want to know all the factors that would multiply together to make minus 3. So I can either have 1 and minus 3, or I could have minus 1 and 3. So either a positive 1 and a negative 3 needs to go in either of these brackets, or a negative 1 and a positive 3. But not only that, I need to figure out which bracket they need to go in, because whatever's going to go in this bracket is going to end up being doubled. Now I need to try and make a positive 5. Okay, now the only way I can do that is if I have a positive 3 in this bracket and a negative 1 in the other. Alright, now these factorising these kind of quadratics are quite tricky, and it does just take a bit of trial and error. So what I would suggest is keep trying different combinations and expanding them out until you get the right answer here. Alright, but we're not finished yet because we're asked to solve this equation. Now this equation is equal to 0. Now the only way that this equation could be 0, and the only way that two numbers could be multiplied together to make 0, is if either one of those is 0 themselves. So the only way this could work is if 2x minus 1 equaled 0, or if x plus 3 equaled 0. Now here, if 2x minus 1 equaled 0, x would have to be a half. Because if you substituted in x equals a half into here, you'd get 2 times a half, which is 1, take away 1 is 0. For this equation, the only way that x plus 3 could be 0 is if x is minus 3. Because minus 3 plus 3 is going to be 0. And those are my two solutions. I know there's only going to be two solutions because it's a quadratic, and quadratics only have two solutions. So my answer is that x is either a half, or 0.5, or x is minus 3. My first mark then is going to come from knowing that 2x and 1 need to be in one bracket, and a single x and 3 needs to be in the other. My second mark is for actually getting the signs correct, so the fact that I'm going to have a negative 1 and a positive 3. And my final mark is for getting the correct answer. And this is a correct answer only mark, therefore I would have to show all my workings to get the other 2 marks. Question 21 says a solid sphere has a mass of 1,180 grams measured to the nearest gram, and a radius of 6.2 centimetres measured to the nearest millimetre. Given that the density is equal to the mass divided by the volume, I don't know why it keeps going blurry, find the upper bound for the density of the sphere. Give your answer to 3 significant figures. Now, I'm trying to find the upper bound, therefore I want to find the maximum value that the density could be. So I'm looking for the upper bound of the density. Now the only way I could get the upper bound of the density is if I find the upper bound of the mass and then divide that by the lower bound of the volume. Okay, so I need to find the upper bound of the mass and then the lower bound of the volume. The reason that I need to do the upper bound divided by the lower bound is because that's going to give me my maximum answer. Alright? Now, if I'm finding the upper bound of the mass, it's already told me that the mass is 1,180 grams measured to the nearest gram. So I need to add on half of this unit. So I'm adding half a gram onto this rounded amount. So I'm going to do 1,180 plus 0.5, which gives me 1,180.5 grams. So I've just added on half a unit that it was rounded to. Now, in order to find the upper bound of the volume, all I've been given is the radius. Okay, so I need to do, first of all, not the upper bound of the volume, sorry, the lower bound. So I need to first of all find the lower bound of the radius. Now, it tells me in the question that the radius was 6.2 centimetres measured to the nearest millimetre. So I'm going to have to take away half of that unit. So I'm taking away half a millimetre. Now, I need to remember that this is in centimetres, okay, not in millimetres. So I need to be careful with what I'm going to be taking away. So I've got 6.2 centimetres, take away 0.05 centimetres, as that would be 0.5 millimetres. And that gives me 6.15 centimetres. So now I've got the lower bound of the radius, I can then find the lower bound of the volume of the sphere. Now, in the front of your paper, it should give you the formula of finding the volume of a sphere. Okay? And finding the volume of a sphere is 4/3 or 4/3 multiplied by pi multiplied by the radius squared. In this case, we're going to do the lower bound of the radius squared. Okay, and that's come from finding the volume of a sphere, which you can find at the front of your paper. So now I'm going to substitute in the values. So I've got 4/3 multiplied by pi, and then I need to do my lower bound of my radius, which is here, 6.15. Oh, sorry, it's not squared, it's cubed. Sorry, it's a radius cubed. So I'm going to have 6.15 cubed. And then type that into my calculator. So I've got 4/3 multiplied by pi multiplied by 6.15 cubed. And that gives me 974.3476828. And that is centimetres cubed because it's volume. Okay, so I found the lower bound of the volume of the sphere, and I found the upper bound of the mass, so I now need to find the upper bound of my density. So, my upper bound of my density then. Okay, we said here was going to be the upper bound of the mass divided by the lower bound of the volume. So the upper bound of my mass was 1,180.5. And I'm going to divide it by the lower bound of my volume, which is this number here. If I type that onto my calculator. I get the answer 1.2115793. Okay, now that's quite a long number. If I look back, it tells me to give my answer to 3 significant figures. The third significant figure in this case is this one here. Whoops, no it's not. It's this one. This one. Now that 1 is going to tell me to round down, so I need to round it to 1.21. My first mark then is for calculating either the upper bound of the mass or the lower bound of the radius. My next mark comes from stating that in order to find the upper bound of the density, I would need the upper bound of the mass and the lower bound of the volume. My third method mark, okay, is going to be involving finding the lower bound of the volume and then using that to substitute into my equation for the upper bound of the density. And then my fourth and final mark is my answer mark for 1.21. Now the mark scheme states that as long as I've got any number between 1.21 and 1.22, I would still get my answer mark. So in question 22, it says that in the diagram, this one here, ADE, so ADE is a right angle triangle. ABCD and AE, F and G are both squares. And I need to prove that the triangle ABE, so that's this one here, is congruent to the triangle ADG. So that's this triangle here. Now congruent means that the lengths of the sides and angles are the same. Alright, so congruent means that the lengths and angles of these two triangles need to be the same. Alright, and that means if I can prove that, I can prove they're congruent. Now the first thing I'm going to look at, okay, is that we've got a square here, which means that this length, so the length AB, has got to be the same length as AD. Now AB belongs to my orange triangle, and AD actually belongs to my green triangle. So at the moment I've just proved that they both share a side of equal length. Okay, because this is a square, the length AD has got to be the same as the length AB. Alright, what I can also notice is if I look at this square up here, that again it's another square, so that means that this length here, AE, has got to be the same as AG. Now AE belongs to my orange triangle, and AG belongs to my green triangle. That means I've just found another length, or two lengths, that both triangles have that are the same length. Alright, so AE, which belongs to my orange triangle, and AG, which belongs to my green triangle, are again both equal. So I've just proved that two of the sides are the same length. Okay, so two sides in both triangles are the same length. I'm now going to focus on this angle. Okay, so the angle of this triangle here and the angle of this triangle here. Alright, now in a square, all angles in the corner are right angles. Okay, now what we can focus on is that this angle is going to be a right angle plus whatever this is. And in this triangle, this has also got a right angle plus whatever that angle in the middle is. Alright, so the angle EAB is actually the same as the angle DAG. So EAB, this one here, is the same as angle DAG, which is this one here. Okay, so I've proved that they've got two lengths that are the same and an angle in between those lengths, which is also the same. However, I need to summarise that. Okay, so I'm going to write that both triangles have two sides equal and the angle in between equal. Okay, therefore we have used the side angle side congruency rule. That means that if two sides are the same, the angle in between those two sides are the same, then the triangle must be congruent. For my first mark, I need to have stated that AB equals AD and AE equals AG, so I needed to have stated both of those for my first mark. My next mark is that I needed to have stated that angle EAB is equal to angle DAG. Okay. And my final mark is for saying that I found two sides that are equal and the angle in between or included between those two sides is also equal. Therefore I've used the side angle side rule. Question 23 then is all about vectors, and it says that M, so this point here, is the midpoint of BC and Q is the midpoint of AM. Now before I start answering the question, I'm just going to make a little note. Now if M is the midpoint of BC, if going from C to M is the vector B, then going from M to B must also be the vector B. Okay? Because we know that this is halfway between those two lengths. Now, question A asks that I need to find AM, so this length here, in terms of the vector A and the vector B. Now I don't know any of these vectors here, so I'm going to have to go the long way. So I'm going to start at A, I'm going to go down, so I've got an A, I've got an A, I've then got another 2A, so I'm down at C, and then I need to go to M by adding another vector of B. So altogether, I've gone along 3 A's plus a B. On part B then, I'm asked to find the vector QB, so this one here from Q to B, in terms of the vector C. Now the only vector C that's involved in this picture at the moment is this one. So I'm actually going to do first, before I even try looking at Q to B, I'm going to try and get this vector C in terms of A and B. Alright, so I know that if I go from P to Q, that equals the vector C. Now another way of getting from P to Q is that I could start P, I could go up to A, so that's a minus A, plus whatever this vector is here. Now I know this full vector is AM, and I've actually been told that Q is the midpoint of AM, so I can just do half of whatever AM is. So another way of getting from P to Q is I go minus A, and then I'm going to add half of the vector A to M, which luckily is here, I worked out in the previous question. So C can actually be written in terms of A and B as minus A plus a half of 3A plus B. Now I'm going to try and simplify that because there's lots of A's and B's going on. So if I simplify that, I've got minus A plus 3 halves of A plus a half of B. Okay, and again I can still simplify. If I've got negative A and I add 3 halves of an A, I'm actually left with half an A. And I've still got my half of the vector B. Now I could leave it as that, so I've got C in terms of A and B, but what I might actually do is I could multiply both sides by 2, and in fact say that 2C is equal to A plus B. Okay? Now, the next thing I'm going to start concentrating on is actually what the question asked me, so the vector from Q to B. So I'm looking at Q to B. Okay, now to get from Q to B, I'm going to have to start at Q, I'm going to have to go backwards along C, so that's going to be a minus C. I'm going to have to go down 2A, so I'm going to be adding a 2A. And then I'm going to go along a B and then along another B. So I'm actually going along 2 B's. And that's how I get from Q to B. Now I'm going to simplify it, okay, because I've got lots of B's here when I can simplify that. So I've got a negative C plus 2A plus 2B. And I'm going to simplify this further. So I've still got my negative C, but actually I'm going to take a factor of 2 out of here. So I've actually got 2 lots of vectors A plus B. Now in the question it wants me to find the vector Q to be in terms of C, and at the moment I've got it in terms of C, A and B. So I'm going to look back at what I did earlier, and actually I'll notice that A plus B equals 2 lots of C. Now I've got an A plus B here, I could substitute 2C into this bracket. So I'd actually still have a negative C plus 2 lots of 2C. And again, I'm going to simplify. So I've got minus c, multiply out the brackets, I end up with 4c. Okay, and can still simplify this because I've got a minus c plus 4c, I end up with 3c. So I've managed to work out the vector q to be in terms of c, and it's 3c. For part A then, I can only get 1 mark, and that is for getting the correct answer. Okay, so for getting 3a plus b. In part B, my first mark would be the fact that I've been able to equate 2 lots of c is equal to a plus b. My second mark is actually an answer mark, and that's for being able to work out that PQ does in fact equal half A plus half B. My third mark is for trying to calculate the vector QB as a combination of C's, A's and B's. And my fourth mark is for getting the answer 3C. Now this is a correct answer only mark. Alright, so if I'd just written 3C here, I would only get 1 mark. I need to show the rest of my workings in order to get the other 3 marks.